This was so good I forgot the fourth episode even happened. Now that is how you make damn good television. God damn, this episode is awesome. The setup, the pacing, the emotion, the impact, and that ending. Go watch this episode. Even if this is the only episode you watch, you need to see this episode. This is the X-Men's Red Wedding. If you're an X-Men fan, your fandom is incomplete if you don't watch this. This episode is a masterclass of setup. The moment the show mentioned Genosha, I knew we'd see its fall, but not like this. Like many a great story, this episode begins with something benign. Trisha Tilby interviews the X-Men to try to humanize them. In the comic, she hooks up with Beast, so we get a little bit of flirting in their scene. I did find it weird though how she knows so much about the X-Men. It seems like all their battles and adventures are all well known to the public, including Jean Grey being the Phoenix. I'm pretty sure that's not common knowledge in the comics, and given the circumstances in the show, it doesn't make any sense for the X-Men to let anyone know that. While most of the team remains at the mansion for the interview, Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit head to Genosha to celebrate the nation getting admitted to the UN. In general, I like the introduction scene, but that music choice, yeah, that's questionable. I know that Genosha is off the coast of Africa, so it makes sense that the music would have African vibes, but it just doesn't work for me. When they land, the trio find Madeline Pryor waiting there to meet them, along with Val Cooper. Madeline is part of the interim council running Genosha. She tells Magneto that the rest of the council wants to speak. That's all well and good, but the reason I love this scene is because I finally get to see my favorite X-Man, Nightcrawler. It's nice to see him matching his comic book persona. His personality is the polar opposite of how he looks. He's fun-loving, he's kind, he's friendly. In the comics, if you were invited to the mansion, he'd be the first one to greet you. It's nice to see him acting like that instead of the shy routine he's had in the films. However, all that teleporting he does when he meets up with Rogue and Gambit, that's a little much. See, the problem is that when he teleports, the smoke Nightcrawler leaves smells like brimstone, which is said to smell like sulfur, which smells like rotten eggs. In short, every time he teleports, it's like he's laying out the world's most powerful farts. That's why it's called Bamf. And he's just bamfing away, and it's like, dude, these people's mouths are open. Tone that shit down. He's still my favorite X-Men, but you have to acknowledge the truth. He's a funky monkey. By the way, you're never going to be able to forget this. Every time you think of Nightcrawler, you're going to think of this. It was done to me, and I don't want to be the only one, so you're welcome. Anyway, Kurt takes Rogue and Gambit to see the town, and we get this weird dancing that doesn't need to be there, although it is an excuse to show off more characters. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Trisha Tilby's interview goes sideways. She talks to Cyclops and it starts off okay. She brings up Scott's relationship with Jean, asking how they hooked up. While that goes down, Jean is out in the pond trying to piece together her memories. Wolverine shows up and we get this intercutting between Jean and Scott explaining how everything changed when Jean became the Phoenix, but how their love kept them together. Wolverine gives Jean some sympathy, and in that moment of vulnerability, Jean kisses him. It's awkward, but Logan says that it's just a little slip. Scott and Jean are a thing. He and Jean aren't. Now, you're going to want to keep that kiss in mind, because it's going to be important later. Things go even worse for Scott. Tilby brings up Nathan, and Scott denies that he and Jean had a child, but Tilby says she spoke to a doctor, and that just sets Scott off. He tells her the doctor refused to deliver the baby because they were mutants. Tilby explains that the whole point of the interview is to show the world that mutants are just people, and she asks why he lied, and he just lays into her.
We fight, risk our lives for you. Evil mutants, robots, crazy aliens. I gave him up. I gave him up because you can't say thank you. Because I have to stomach your questions and prove that I'm a person.
Now, I wonder if all those people who thought the executioner had a point would think the same thing about Cyclops. Probably not. Which is funny, because he's not wrong. The whole point of the X-Men is for them to act like superheroes to prove that mutants are just people, but it constantly gets thrown back in their faces. It's not even that they're not being thanked for helping. It's that they get attacked for helping. None of their good deeds go unpunished. Going off on someone who's not doing that isn't the smartest thing to do, but it is understandable why Cyclops is angry about his situation. Meanwhile, on Genosha, Magneto meets with the Council. There's Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, Callisto, Banshee, Moira, and Madeline Pryor. Their reason for wanting to see Magneto? They want him to lead. At first he refuses, but vanity is definitely his favorite sin, so he agrees on one condition, that Rogue becomes his queen. That doesn't go over well with Rogue. She's like, was this the plan the whole time? Pretend to change just to shack back up with me? And the thing is, yeah, that might have been the plan. Thanks to his powers, Magneto can touch Rogue so she can have the physical contact she wants. You can't put it past Magneto to manipulate people like this. It's kind of his thing. Speaking of manipulation, we cut back to Scott and Jean having a psychic moment together where she asks about Nathan, and Scott describes him, but in the middle of this, other Jean cuts in. It turns out this little moment wasn't with Jean, but was actually with Madeline, and Jean is pissed because the whole psychic connection was supposed to be her and Scott's special thing. She asks how long it's been going on, and Scott says for months, so Jean cops an attitude. Now remember, she swapped spit with Wolverine just a few minutes ago, and he didn't kiss her, she kissed him. And the way it went down made it clear she would have gone further if Logan hadn't stopped her. And yet here she is chastising Scott for talking to the mother of his child, who he didn't know was a clone, for months. She's like, why are you talking to that heifer? I have given everything for you. You want to be with the bitch? Fine then, be with the bitch. I'm not making this up. That's kind of what she says. But it puts Cyclops in an unfair position because it's not his fault Jean got swapped for a clone who had all her memories. Jean's anger would make more sense if things played out like they had in the comics, where Madeline was a completely different person, just with elements of Jean's personality and memories, but wasn't pretending to be her. That said, I do prefer this approach over the comics version, where Scott ditches Madeline and his son for Jean the moment she comes back. At least this makes him look confused, not like a douchebag. But still, what a mess. The whole thing gets interrupted though when Jean gets hit by psychic feedback. Meanwhile, Rogue goes to tell Gambit about her plans to become Magneto's waifu. We finally get the backstory for how these two met. This caused some contention because it wasn't clear how old, or rather how young, Rogue was when she hooked up with Magneto in the past. The flashback kind of explains it, but it's not definitive. In the show, Rogue appears to be in her early 20s when she joins the X-Men. Previous seasons show Rogue was in her late teens when Mystique had her committing crimes. The flashback seems to take place before Rogue stole Ms. Marvel's powers, and we know she joined the X-Men immediately after that. And the flashback takes place over time, at least several months, if not a year, and it appears she leaves Magneto around the time she goes after Ms. Marvel, so it would make Rogue somewhere between 19 to 22 when she hooks up with Magneto. I'm only bringing this up because some people claim she was underage at the time. That doesn't look to be the case. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. At any rate, all this leads to one of the best scenes in the episode when Rogue explains what it's like to be with Gambit.
Your heart may beat for me, but I can't feel it. You light up everything you touch, but never me.
Just a reminder, Disney fired the man who wrote that. I want to know what Beau DeMaio did to get them to let him go. It better have been really bad, because if it was just creative differences, y'all should have let the man have his way. Following this, Valerie Cooper confronts the council for picking Magneto as a leader.
Most other nations don't allow a terrorist to be their leader.
Yet so many allow their leaders to be terrorists.
It's so quick but so poignant and incidentally topical given what's going on in certain parts of the world. DeMaio is just nailing it here, and it looks like he's doing it with little effort. Now, that's not to say that DeMaio didn't make some questionable choices, like the reveal of Rogue accepting Magneto's offer. We see her floating down, and this music plays, and I'm like, is that Ace to Base? It is. That's Happy Nation. That came out in 93. This is supposed to be 97. Nobody was playing this in 97. Beau DeMaio and I are the same age. We were born in the same year, 82, so come on, man. This was not the shit in 97. I get why he chose it. It works for the scene, and most of the top songs from 97 don't. I mean, it'd be funny if she came down to Up Jumps the Boogie or Honey or I Believe I Can Fly, but those just don't work. Unbreak My Heart, however, that's gonna be real relevant very soon. How soon? Immediately. After Gambit walks away when he sees Magneto and Rogue touch, Madeline Pryor gets hit with a psychic attack just like Jean did. She goes outside to get some air and bumps into Cable. He's running around telling people to leave. Rogue tells Magneto that she still loves Gambit. Madeline realizes who Cable is, but just as she does, he gets pulled back through time. He apologizes, and she's like, for what? For this. Jesus Christ, this whole end of the episode is just brilliant. It's the X-Men's Red Wedding. Tons of people die you would never expect to die. The survivors try to mount a defense, but this giant sentinel is crazy strong, and it, along with the regular sentinels, kills every mutant it sees. And then we learn why Magneto is not to be fucked with. He sends Rogue and Gambit to save the Morlocks who are trapped on the other side of Genosha, while he takes on the giant sentinel. They have this insane fight, and it tosses Magneto into Xavier's statue, crushing the mutants underneath it. Magneto snaps, starts having flashbacks of the Holocaust, and throws a train, a whole fucking train, at this thing, but that's still not enough. The Morlocks doubt anyone will come to help them, but Leech says that Magneto promised they'd be safe, and he believes in Magneto. You already know that's not going to end well. Gambit finally makes his way to the Morlocks, taking out a Sentinel in the process. As they try to leave, Magneto gets tossed in front of them, and down comes a train. Now, if you ever doubted how much of a badass Gambit is, this dude takes out the whole train with his scarf. The scarf! He charges the scarf and nukes the whole train. Yes, but good things aren't meant to last. The giant Sentinel attacks Magneto and the Morlocks. Magneto holds back the blast as best as he can, but it's obvious it's not gonna work. Rogue tries to jump in to help, but Magneto wraps up Rogue and Gambit in metal to protect them. This whole time, Leech clings to Magneto, and when Magneto realizes this is it, they're done for, he looks down and he says to Leech in German,
Hab keine Angst.
and then they just get taken out. Rogue loses it and flies after the Sentinel. Gambit hops on a bike, charges it, and sends it flying at Rogue to save her. The Sentinel goes on about its business. It's about to wipe out the remaining survivors, but Gambit comes running in. The Sentinel blasts the ground, but that doesn't stop him. He leaps into the air, his staff charged, ready to attack, and then this happens.
Mutant intruder neutralized.
The name's Gambit, mon ami. Remember it.
And just when you think it couldn't hit any harder,
Sugar. I can't feel you.
where is Toni Braxton when you need her? God damn, that was a good episode. That is how you make good television. That is how you do it. Just incredible. And there's so much to work with here. Are we about to see Cassandra Nova, Xavier's twin sister? Are we about to see Bastion, who's tied to Nimrod? Are we about to get Operation Zero Tolerance? Did Leech siphon off Magneto's powers? What was the deal with Cable? It was like he was trying to stop this from happening. Does that mean he's going to come back to try to undo it? I haven't been this excited about a show since Picard Season 3. Thank you, Bo DeMaio. I don't know why Disney fired you, but if it was over some basic shit, they made the wrong decision. Because goddamn, do you know what you're doing? Quick, somebody find them two clowns from the Rings of Power and show them this show. This is how you make an excellent show. You see how I'm excited? How I'm pulled in? How I'm asking all these questions because I want to know what happens next? That's called quality writing. There are some nitpicks I could have about this episode, but all those don't mean a damn thing after that ending. That was superbly done. Not a real complaint to be had. Honestly, if you don't like this episode, then you didn't watch it. Now, supposedly, this was just the beginning. There are even greater stakes following this. Fine, my body is ready. I am in for whatever they got planned, because damn was this good. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.